So we recently just got back from our first ever Royal Caribbean cruise on board Allure of the Seas. And throughout the cruise, I kept a running list on my phone of both the good and the bad of Royal Caribbean. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys 10 things that I think Royal Caribbean did better than Disney Cruise Line, and 8 things that I think they could improve upon. Before we get into that though, guys, I just want to give a quick thank you to all of you guys for such an incredible year. Over the course of 2024, we gained over 12,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough. I also want to give a huge shout out to my incredible Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this channel would not have grown to where it is today, and I am eternally grateful for all of you guys. We have a lot of incredible content coming in 2025, and I promise you guys it is going to be the biggest year of the channel ever. All of our Patreon supporters are going to get early and ad-free access to all of the incredible new things that we're going to be doing next year. So click the link down in the description below if you want to support the channel for as little as $3 and get early and ad-free access to all of that great content. I also want to give a quick plug to my second channel called Express Traveler. We have 2 videos on that channel so far, and while we have over 1,000 subscribers already on the channel, which thank you guys so much, by the way, for believing in that channel and giving it a shot, we need the watch time in order to get monetized. So if you guys don't have too much going on and you want to play some of those videos on repeat, that would help us immensely. I really want to make that channel a part-time job, as I love traveling and I love sharing my plus size experiences with you guys. So if you can help us out, link down in the description below. But with all that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. The 10 things that I think Royal Caribbean did better than Disney Cruise Line. First things first, I think the Wi-Fi situation on board Royal Caribbean is 10 times better than the Wi-Fi situation on board Disney Cruise Line. Not only are you able to browse the internet, check emails, watch YouTube and TikTok on the paid internet, but for free, you are able to also send pictures to people back on land. That's not something that you can do on Disney Cruise Line. The regular free Wi-Fi on Disney Cruise Line just gets you messaging, and that is it. You can't send pictures without paying for a package, where on Royal Caribbean, you can send pictures without a package, and I think that that is a huge plus, especially for families who are wanting to stay connected with folks on land. Not only that, but the Wi-Fi speeds and connection in general are a lot better on Royal Caribbean than Disney Cruise Line. We are getting ready to set sail on the Disney Treasure, so who knows if that situation is going to be improved on this brand new ship. But as of right now, compared to the other ships in the Disney Cruise Line fleet, Royal Caribbean has a leg up on that. The next thing that I absolutely love about Royal Caribbean that Disney Cruise Line doesn't do is the buffet on Royal Caribbean stays open until 11:30 in the morning. On Disney Cruise Line, it's rare to see the buffet open anytime after 10:30, maybe 10:45 on a sea day. And on Royal Caribbean, you can go to the Windjammer at 11:30 and still get your breakfast items, which I think is phenomenal. Coda and I, we love sleeping in on our cruises, especially on sea days. And on Disney Cruise Line, we always have to set our alarm for about 10 a.m. to make sure that we are up to get to Cabanas to get some Mickey waffles. But on Royal Caribbean, we can set our alarms for 11 and still have plenty of time to go to the Windjammer and get some breakfast, which is our personal favorite meals of the day, especially on cruises. Moving on to Perfect Day at Coco Cay, Royal Caribbean's private island. While the island itself is significantly smaller than what you can find on Castaway Cay, there are still plenty of food options on Coco Cay, which is something that I love about Royal Caribbean over Disney. The number of food options that are available to you on Coco Cay is incredible. Not only do you have free options, but you also have additional paid options as well to sweeten the deal and to get yourself some slightly better quality food. And I think that's awesome. Not only do you have the main buffet location in the center of the island with a lot of options in general, way more than what you can find at Cookie's Barbecue over at Castaway Cay, but you also have some little snack shacks spread out throughout the island as well, with some other different options, including mozzarella sticks and funnel cakes and chicken sandwiches. That is incredible. I just love having the freedom of choice when it comes to food on Coco Cay, and that definitely gives Royal Caribbean a leg up on Disney. Keeping with Perfect Day at Coco Cay, I think that the beach chairs that they have on Coco Cay are better than what we have over on Disney Cruise Line. Now, on Disney Cruise Line at Castaway and at Lookout, The beach chairs are like made of rubber and they have like slats that go along the whole thing, and sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable. Whereas on Coco Key, the beach chairs are made out of like a mesh material, and overall I just think it makes for a more comfortable lounging experience overall compared to what we have at Disney. I managed to get a pretty solid nap on Coco Key while we were there, and I find it a bit more difficult to get a nap in on Castaway Key or Lookout Key. But to each their own. That's just my personal opinion on the mesh chairs. You guys can let me know your opinions down in the comment section below. Are you guys more of a fan of mesh, or are you guys more of a fan of the rubber slats? Going back to the plethora of food options that we have at Perfect Day at Coco Key, I want to go back on board the ship. I am obsessed with the number of food options that we have on board the Royal Caribbean ships. Now, granted, we were on one of the largest cruise ships in the world, Allure of the Seas. It is an Oasis class ship, which is significantly bigger than what you can find currently at Disney Cruise Line. But I just love that you have so many food options on board the ship. Not only do you have the different free options, including the main dining room, the buffet, and the quick service options, but you also have the signature paid options as well, all throughout the ship. With Disney Cruise Line, if you're not dining in one of the main dining rooms for lunch, then you're pretty much SOL for food unless you're on the upper deck. You have to make your way to the very top of the ship in order to get extra food during the day. And if you decide not to have dinner in the main dining room, then again, you're SOL for food unless you go up to the upper deck. And even then, your options are pretty limited. You only have pizza, burgers, fries, chicken tenders, maybe a salad if that location is open, because some of the quick service locations up on the upper deck on Disney Cruise Line, they close a little bit early, which I do not understand in the slightest, but it is what it is. Whereas on Royal Caribbean, you have options everywhere. And I absolutely love that. Not only do you have a bunch of food options on the upper deck, but you also have food options down on the lower level of the ship, specifically in the Royal Promenade and in the boardwalk area. You guys can go ahead and ask Coda. You don't have to walk very far at all on a Royal Caribbean ship before you find food, and that's awesome in my opinion. I'm hoping that Disney Cruise Line can get their act together on future ships, specifically the Adventure, and have a lot more food options spread out more evenly on the ship. In keeping with the theme of food on Royal Caribbean, I love that the buffet is open for dinner as well. On Disney Cruise Line, if you're not a fan of the main dining rooms, then your options are pretty limited when it comes to dinner time food. Again, your only options are pretty much on the upper deck, where you have cheeseburgers, hot dogs, fries, and pizza. That's pretty much it. And of course, you also have the room service, but that's also pretty limited as well. Back in the day, pre-COVID, the buffet actually used to be open on Disney Cruise Line for dinner, where they had wait staff and a set menu. I don't think it was open specifically as a buffet, but it was another option for you guys in case you really didn't want to experience the main dining room that night. And I promise you, I'm not trying to brag when I say this, but as someone who sails Disney Cruise Line a lot, specifically on the 4 OG ships, being the Magic, the Wonder, the Dream, and the Fantasy, the restaurant menus are pretty much the same across the board for the majority of the restaurants. You of course have your different restaurants like Rapunzel's and Tiana's that are gonna have different types of food options, but as far as everything else, it's pretty similar across the board, and it can get boring after a while. And I love how on Royal Caribbean, your dinner options are just plentiful, and just having the buffet there with a different menu every single night, it's fantastic, and I absolutely love that about Royal Caribbean. The next thing that I love about Royal Caribbean compared to Disney are the multitude of evening entertainment options. Now, I'm not saying that Disney Cruise Line doesn't have a lot of entertainment offerings in the evening, but they do kind of have a limited number of entertainment offerings in the evening, but just on Royal Caribbean, everything is so spread out. There are so many different venues that are open until the wee hours of the morning, and there's always something going on to distribute the crowds. Whereas on Disney Cruise Line, specifically for adults, if you're looking for entertainment in the evenings, there's only one location that's open, and that one location can get pretty full pretty quickly. But with Royal Caribbean, there's something going on everywhere and you have so many different options. So I think with Royal Caribbean in general, you just have a lot more freedom to do a bunch of different things compared to Disney Cruise Line. On Disney Cruise Line, things feel pretty structured and your day-to-day activities are kind of already planned out because you already know you're gonna have dinner at a set time. You already know you're gonna go to your show at a set time, and you already know that you're gonna be spending every evening in the one adult venue that's open until about midnight every night doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Whereas with Royal Caribbean, there's something different going on everywhere. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so this right here is a big selling point for Royal Caribbean, especially for someone like me who's a theater geek. Royal Caribbean has literal full Broadway shows. That is incredible. It's probably the biggest reason why I booked Star of the Seas, because Back to the Future the musical is coming to Star of the Seas, and that is one of my all-time favorite Broadway shows, which is sadly closing next week in New York, and I'm so happy that it's going to live on Star of the Seas. And not only do they have Back to the Future the musical on Star of the Seas, but on the ship that I was on, Allure of the Seas, they have Mamma Mia. On another ship, they have Grease. On another ship, they have Cats. They used to have Hairspray. They have a whole bunch of different Broadway shows that they can perform on all of these different ships on Royal Caribbean. And on other cruise lines as well, they have Broadway shows. How come Disney hasn't thought about bringing full-on Broadway shows to their ships? They have so many options when it comes to Broadway shows that have performed in not only New York, but in the West End and touring as well. And they haven't thought to bring it on to their cruise ships. It absolutely blows my mind. And I think having these shows, big selling point for me and a huge win for Royal. Second to last thing that I love about Royal Caribbean over Disney is that you pay for your upgrades and experiences before you actually get onto the ship. Now, what do I mean by this? So when we first booked our cruise, we were able to go onto the Royal Caribbean app and we were able to look at the different excursions and different onboard activities offered on the ship for an added charge. Now, when it comes to Disney Cruise Line, at a certain point, you're able to go in and you're able to book up different excursions and different activities. I'm gonna use the Alaska cruises as an example because those are very popular itineraries with very popular excursions. With Disney Cruise Line, at a certain point, depending on your Castaway Club level, you're able to go in and book certain activities. Now, using Alaska, for example, you have the opportunity to book the Glacier Explorer Tour, where on your Glacier Day, you're able to get off the ship on a little tender boat and you're able to get closer to the glacier that day. That excursion sells out quickly. And with Disney Cruise Line, if you're a higher up tier of Castaway Club member, you're able to reserve that and hold on to it until about 3 days prior to your sail date. And this excursion isn't cheap either. It's about $300 per person in order to do this excursion, but it's so popular and people book it and hold on to it. And they don't have to pay until after you do the excursion while you're on the ship. With Royal Caribbean, you have to pay for that excursion when you book it on the app. So it could be a month, 2 months, however long prior to your sailing. If you want to book that excursion, you have to pay for it. Now, of course, if you do decide to cancel before getting on board the ship, you are able to get a refund, no questions asked, no problem. But it just makes it so that you really have to think about what excursions you want to do. And you can't just hold on to things all willy-nilly unless you're able to take that financial hit. Do you know what I mean? So that's something that I think that works in Royal Caribbean's favor. I really wish that Disney Cruise Line would change that system, because again, not only are people holding on to these very popular excursions en masse just prior to getting on board the ship, but it's also an added charge that gets tacked onto your bill as your cruise ends. So it's very easy to forget that you wanted to do this excursion or you did it and you still have to pay for it. At the very end of your cruise, you can get hit with a pretty hefty bill that you just completely forgot about, and now you have to worry about trying to pay for that excursion that you forgot about. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? I hope it does. And last but not least, something that I think Royal Caribbean does that Disney will never be able to match is the adult entertainment. Adult entertainment on Royal Caribbean Cruise Line is on a whole nother level compared to Disney Cruise Line, specifically the Crazy Quest. Now, you've seen Quest be played on Disney Cruise Line on my channel before. You guys can go back and look for those videos. On Royal Caribbean, I saw parts of people's bodies I did not expect to see. So much skin, so much creative language, actions, hand gestures, you name it. It's basically fair game on Royal Caribbean. When Disney Cruise Line, there's a little bit of a limit there. You know, it's possible to get rated R on Disney Cruise Line, and I've heard some swearing here and there, and I've seen some hand gestures, but it's on a whole nother level with Royal Caribbean, and that was fantastic. It was probably the most fun evening I've ever had on a cruise in my entire life, and I'm so excited to get back on another Royal Caribbean cruise just to experience that again. All right, guys, now that I have spent the last, 10, 15 minutes gushing over Royal Caribbean Cruise Line and why I love it so much, there's unfortunately some downsides, and there are things that I think that Royal Caribbean does fall behind in compared to Disney Cruise Line. I've sailed with Disney Cruise Line many times, and there are things that I think that Disney Cruise Line just does way better than Royal Caribbean. So here are the 8 things that I think Disney Cruise Line just does better than Royal Caribbean. Number 1. Why is the free ice cream closed after 5 p.m.? We went twice on our 4-night sailing on Allure of the Seas to go and get some ice cream for Coda, and it was after 5 p.m. and the ice cream on deck was closed. The free ice cream was just closed. There's no soft serve ice cream after 5 p.m. Why? Why is that a thing? Now, I don't know if this is just an Allure of the Seas thing or if this is an entire Royal Caribbean fleet thing, but that's just what we observed. If you guys have had different experiences, then please let me know down in the comments section if what we experienced was an anomaly, but it's something worth noting because something that a lot of people look forward to on Disney Cruise Line is the free and unlimited ice cream that is sometimes open until midnight, if not a little bit later. And if you're a Disney Cruise Line diehard looking to go on to Royal Caribbean, you might want to try their ice cream. You're probably going to get disappointed if you try and show up after 5 p.m. Again, that's just our experience, but it's something that I felt like it was worth noting. Next up, this is a very, very minor thing, and I feel like it's just because this is an older Oasis class ship that hasn't been amplified yet. Hopefully they get around to switching this up with its amplification that's occurring within the next several months. Your room keys on Royal Caribbean, you have to actually physically slide your card into a slot in order to open your door. You can't just tap it. So for someone like me who carries around a lanyard, I always have to fidget with my card holder to get my card out just to slide it in and out to get into my room, and I found that pretty bothersome. Again, not a big deal, nothing that's going to ruin my cruise by any means, but it's just something to know when compared to Disney Cruise Line. Okay, now this was a big one for me, and again, I don't know if this is fleet-wide with Royal Caribbean or if it was just because we were on Allure of the Seas. You guys can let me know if you're a seasoned Royal Caribbean cruiser. There is no self-service laundry stations on board the ship. If you need to iron anything, if you want to wash anything, you have to pay someone to do it, and I don't really like that. I really don't like having to be forced to pay someone in order to iron your clothes or to press your clothes or to wash something for you. If you're on a longer cruise, you're gonna have to shell out some money in order to get some things washed. And again, I just don't like that. On Disney Cruise Line, on every ship, there are laundry facilities spread out throughout the ship, and you can go in there and pay a small fee to wash your clothes. You don't have to pay anybody to iron your clothes. That's still free, but on Royal Caribbean, you have to pay someone to do it, and you have to kind of pre-plan to do that ahead of time. If you watched our vlogs from Allure of the Seas, there was a shirt that I really wanted ironed, but it was too late to send it off in order to have it brought back that same day. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's something really important that I didn't know before getting onto a Royal Caribbean cruise, and I kind of wish I knew that ahead of time. If you guys are interested in a video of me listing off things that I wish I knew before getting onto a Royal Caribbean cruise, let me know down in the comment section below if that's something that you want, and also leave a like on this video as well. If this video gets 800 likes, then I'll go ahead and make that video. Next up, this is a more recent change when it comes to Royal Caribbean, but unfortunately you only get your room cleaned and serviced once a day. On that very first day we got on the ship, we met our room host, who was fantastic by the way, but he did ask us when we preferred to have our room cleaned, whether it be midday or sometime in the evening. And we chose the evening because it kind of lines up with what we're used to on Disney Cruise Line, where we get back from dinner and our room is turned down and we have little towel animal. You know, we're used to having that in the evening. We can live without having it done in the middle of the day, but it is something that Disney Cruise Line does do better than Royal Caribbean. And again, like I said earlier, it's a more recent change where Royal Caribbean doesn't do cleaning twice a day unless you're in a suite level and above. So you unfortunately have to pay a little bit extra for your room if you want to have service twice a day. Okay, so this next thing is something that annoyed me a little bit more than it should, but I can completely understand why Royal Caribbean does it, as it's kind of like a cost-saving thing. When it comes to towels that you get by the pool or when you get off the ship, if you don't return that specific towel or the number of towels that you rented, you have to pay $25 for it. That's a yikes, because on Disney Cruise Line, I'm used to taking a bunch of towels with me off the ship onto Castaway Cay or Lookout Cay, or even for excursions for that matter. You go to Cozumel, Mexico, for example, you get off the ship and they hand you towels. They're just like, here, take as many as you need and go for it. Of course, they would like for you to bring your towels back, but if you don't bring the towels back, then they're not going to penalize you for it. You know what I mean? They don't count all their towels. With Royal Caribbean, they count their towels, and if you don't bring that same towel back on board the ship that you got off with on Coco Cay, then you're getting charged $25 for that towel. And I don't really like it. I don't really like that feeling. Like, you have to be protective of your towel. Heaven forbid you forget your towel anywhere, you're cooked. You're getting charged that $25. So yeah, just be aware of that before you get on a Royal Caribbean ship, is that you have to keep track of your towels. And speaking of Coco Cay, the island is amazing, but it isn't perfect. It can get very crowded very quickly. If I wake up on the morning of my Coco Cay visit and I walk out on my balcony and I'm looking up and I'm seeing an Oasis class ship parked across from me, the day's chalked. The day is chalked and I am not getting off of that ship. Heaven forbid you're visiting Coco Cay and you have 2 Oasis class ships in, then I wouldn't even bother getting off of the ship. Again, Coco Cay is pretty, I love it, and I will happily go back, but it can get very crowded and very overwhelming very quickly. And again, the island is a lot smaller than what you have at Castaway Cay. Now, there are a lot of beach areas and there are some secluded places to go to, and you can watch from our videos that we did find a more quiet area to go to, but we get overwhelmed by crowds very quickly, and I feel like the island can get very crowded. Now, there are areas that you can pay extra to get into that won't be as crowded, like the Cocoa Beach Club or the Hideaway, which is the adult-only area, but again, you have to pay extra for that. If you want to be able to enjoy Coco Cay and not have the crowds, then you have to pay extra for that, and I don't really like that idea. I love how, at least on Castaway and Lookout, there are areas you can go to that are a bit more secluded and a bit quieter. And with those islands, you only have 1 ship in at a time. You can't have 2 ships in. So no matter what size ship, there are going to be areas that are a bit more secluded than others. So it's just something to note. Something else that I want to point out that, again, isn't a deal breaker for me. It's not something that's going to ruin my vacation. It's just an observation that I made when comparing Royal to Disney, is that when you get back onto the ship after being off at an island, whether it be Nassau or Coco Cay, you don't get any cold towels or water when getting back on board the ship. They don't have someone out there giving you a cold towel to press onto your head or body to kind of cool you down after being off on a hot island. And they don't also provide you with like complimentary water cups to get back on board the ship as well. It's something that Disney does, and I think actually Carnival does it as well. When we were in Nassau, I could have swore I saw a cold water station outside of a Carnival ship before getting on to their ship as well. So you guys can let me know if that is an actual thing. But at least with our cruise on Royal Caribbean, there were no cold towels and no cold water stations before getting back onto the ship. Again, not a deal breaker, it's just an observation when comparing the 2 lines. Ooh. And last but certainly not least, guys, this is kind of a biggie, and it's something that I noticed like immediately when getting on board a Royal Caribbean cruise. You know that if you sail with Disney Cruise Line, sanitation is the biggest thing. You cannot walk into a dining venue without them handing you a sanitation wipe or making you wash your hands or making you get a squirt of hand sanitizer and, you know, rinsing off before getting into a venue or going into the buffet. You have to wash your hands, you got to sanitize, you got to do something on Disney Cruise Line. They practically force you to do it. Whereas with Royal Caribbean, they don't really care. They don't force you to do anything. They don't hand you a Sani wipe. They don't make you squirt hand sanitizer. When you go into the buffet, they do have someone there saying, wash your hands, please, but they don't enforce it. I saw multiple people just kind of walk on by and just go to the buffet line and just start handling everything and serving themselves without really washing their hands. And it gave me a little bit of the yick. It's not going to stop me from going back on a Royal Caribbean cruise. It's just something that I need to note for next time, and I just need to know to be a bit more cautious when it comes to my health and safety on board a Royal Caribbean cruise, because I feel like on a Royal Caribbean cruise it's going to be a lot easier to get sick. And with Disney Cruise Line, it's not something I have to worry about, because no matter where I go, they make you wash your hands. So again, it's not something that's going to stop me from going on Royal Caribbean, but it's something that I want you guys to be aware of. And when comparing the two different cruise lines, it's a pretty big thing. But anyways, guys, that's gonna do it for this, I don't even know how long video comparing the two cruise lines. It's something that a lot of you guys have been asking for. As a seasoned Disney Cruise Line veteran, going on my first Royal Caribbean cruise, it was quite an experience. And you guys really wanted to know what I loved about Royal versus what I didn't love so much. And I really hope that this answered a lot of your questions as to how I felt about Royal Caribbean. Obviously, I loved it enough to book another sailing on Star of the Seas in October of 2025. So we are going to be sailing with Royal Caribbean again in the future. And of course, hopefully we will be able to sail on another Royal Caribbean cruise before that October sailing. I want to thank you all so much again for watching today's video. Leave a like if you enjoyed and drop a comment down below. Let me know what you guys thought about today's video. If you guys are interested in plus size travel on airplanes, go ahead and check out my second channel, Express Traveler. We have 2 videos on there right now. We are trying to get monetized. Any kind of interaction on that channel would help immensely. I hope you are all having a wonderful day, morning, afternoon, evening, and I'll see you guys in 2025.